All right, so welcome. This is Tough Table Lite version 3, video 3. This actual podcast came about kind of by mistake as a joke with a Facebook post talking about um, female hormonal birth control and some of the effects. And I didn't really think that it would bring a lot of attention, but it did. And one of the people who chimed in the most, so we've talked about it, off social media, was Cara, okay, who I'll be talking with today. So we're going to go over, pill-based hormonal birth control, some of its effects, and before we get into that, I want Cara to just, introduce herself quickly to the audience, and then we'll get rolling.
Yeah, my name is Cara Volpicelli. I have been a fitness professional in the fitness industry for 25 years now, and I am a competitor and coach. I am a two-time WNBF pro and a WNBF world champion, and I focus my coaching on women. So I have definitely found that the birth control pill can be really prevalent as a factor in how we coach women that are using the pill. And there's a lot of things that need to be considered in that process. It's a topic I've been excited to talk to Ryan about. As he mentioned his post, I chimed in. I'm like, I think this is a topic that people need to know more about. I really feel like there's some pretty cool facts that people just don't know about. So here we are.
Yeah, and back to that post, it was more along the lines of, before I got really heavy into the blood work, as my coaching career went on, it was just an observation. The observation probably started before fitness. Once I got into fitness, I started noticing it more and more and more. Then in my daily life, I noticed that some women seem to have been attracted to, and again, I don't mean to offend anyone, but they seem to be attracted to less masculine men. And I started to see it more and more. And then just out of sheer chance, when I became a coach and predominantly women, I would notice this. And then we'd start to see certain inconsistencies. And then I'd always find out, wait, pill-based birth control, pill-based birth control. And then I started looking for it, and I started to realize, like, I'm noticing a pattern here. And then once I got heavily into the blood work and ordering that for clients, I started to know based on that, 99% of the time who was on that pill-based birth control, because I'd scroll all the way to the bottom and go right to SHBG, sex hormone binding globulin. And whenever that was through the roof, it was like, are you on pill bait? Yes. And so I started to look for some of those trends, and I did start to notice. And then you start to see on, social media and Twitter, people start to talk about it. It's like, wait, hey, I noticed this trend a while back, and I was just like, I didn't want to come out and like say it, but then you start looking at certain studies and you start to see that women who have been on that for a prolonged period of time are a little susceptible to choosing different mates and different partners based on some of the effects that pill is doing and generating for them.
Yeah. And that's the basis of your post. And that's what I find so fascinating that that study that you're referring to, they actually had two different groups of women, and they had ones that were on the hormone-based birth control, and then women that weren't. And they had them look at men's faces and their facial features, and they found that the ones that were on the hormone-based birth control preferred a more feminine type look that had, a different jawline, a more rounder face, cheekbones more feminized, and the other women preferred the more masculine look with, the masculine jaw, and that was pretty significant.
Yeah. And it's like with stuff like that, it's saying that or implying that on the pill, the shift is toward less masculine because it could be argued in the other direction that, like, oh, they're preferring the more nurturing traits of the male because the pill is like constantly tricking them that they're pregnant, okay? And it's you may not be seeking that other stuff because you're in a nurturing phase. Like that's
Right.
some of the stuff that they're inferring. And if you're pre-pill or you've never taken it, you look for the more masculine stuff that's linked to, higher levels of, masculinity, higher levels of testosterone. Even things like, pheromones and certain biological signals seems to be influenced by long-term use of this pill.
Yeah, absolutely. They found that the women were choosing mates that were more similar to them. So, and also more genetically similar, which is really interesting and probably not
Not
very good for the longevity of humankind and
Yeah.
in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I mean, look around. It's like, again, I'm not trying to throw stones or anything, but you are seeing this is no coincidence that this is happening. This is not pseudoscience. This is not in our imagination. You look around now and you compare it to 20 years ago, and women are in general heavier. Okay, they're not as happy. And men are heavier, not as happy, and more feminized. They are weaker. Testosterone levels are going down, sperm counts are going down. It's almost like, these relationships become almost genderless. Like you said, they're seeking out
Mhm.
people like them. They're not seeking out a partner, a biological supplement. They're seeking out an equal, and that sometimes doesn't really work. It's just interesting to notice that, and that's what that last podcast I did with Dr. Anthony, like it all relates to each other. Like just as you have all these poisons in this birth control, on top of that, you have all the endocrine disruptors in our daily life, the soaps, the detergents, all the sunscreen. If you don't know what you're doing with that, you're already messing with those complex biological systems. And then on top of that, you're throwing in this big one. And then people wonder, they're on that birth control, they stop, they get pregnant, which means it's essentially you're still in that same nurturing phase. They give birth, and let's say they stop, and that's when the kids get a little older and they're not as preoccupied with all the craziness, like the shit I have to deal with now. Um, whoa. But when that woman is not so preoccupied there and the kid gets a little more autonomous, now all of a sudden they're not on that pill. They're not constantly distracted. Now they're like, wait, I'm not attracted to you.
Yeah. The
Like,
fog gets lifted and they're like, wait a second, what did I do? How did I get here?
so it's like, again, you don't want to make all these inferences. It's like this led to this. But again, if you look at the picture here about how society as a whole is going, plus also divorce rates and stuff like that, like is a lot of this stuff linked? Is a lot of this stuff, does it all go together? I just find
Yeah.
it very, it seems to be like that, like when the woman who was on the birth control for so long, it's almost predictable when they'll start to feel a certain way. It's like the kid is
Right.
a certain age, a little more autonomous. I have a little bit of free time, not on that pill. And it's like, wait, what is going on? And
Yeah.
then in comes the husband, and it's,
Yeah.
if you start to look at some of that biological stuff, like pill versus no pill, if a lot of stuff can change. A lot of stuff can change.
Yeah, and they found that the divorce rates on with women that are on the pill were lower because as you mentioned earlier, they want that sense of safety, right? They're in that nurturing phase. They want everything to be secure. And so they tend to just stay in that relationship. And then, as you mentioned, once they come off, the fog starts to lift. And now they're feeling differently and they're looking at their mate differently. They're no longer attracted to them in the same way. And then that can cause some big problems because
Major
you're like,
problems.
oh boy, where where did I get this mate and how
Yep.
did I feel this way? And now things are so dramatically different.
So some of those weaker males, they love the pill.
Yeah.
It puts them in contention.
hmm
But I don't know. I think that that's when you start to really think about that and really sit and think about that type of impact that it has, it is kind of worrisome, that like this thing is mass produced and pushed out at early ages, at very early ages,
hmm
developmental ages, and it's like what type of havoc does this stuff start to to cause? Which I mean, why don't we get into something related to that? Like, what do we find are some of these effects besides the mate preference and the seeking of masculine versus feminine um features? What else are we seeing with prolonged hormone-based birth control?
Well, I think the main thing to consider is that I really find this is kind of like a lazy drug. It's kind of a way to slap a band-aid on something. And so the studies have shown that almost 60% of women choose to start the pill not for prevention of pregnancy, but more for controlling of symptoms. So things that have nothing to do with pregnancy, like maybe prolonged bleeding or acne and things like that. So instead of looking at the underlying issue, well, what's causing these symptoms, they just prescribe the pill as a blanket, band-aid. It's going to fix it all. And as you mentioned, there's a whole bunch of side effects that come with it. So to me, it's not really the appropriate way to go about things, unless you're looking at something like endometriosis or something like that. Or, of course, you don't want to get pregnant. But there are so many implications. And I think, one of the main things is, as coaches, we're going to look at, how does this affect the women that we're coaching? And I think the main thing is your body composition changes dramatically. I mean, the pill really does sabotage
Yep.
your fitness goals in a lot of ways. The main thing is that it's going to affect your testosterone. And I don't think that that's looked at in especially in natural bodybuilding and applied to women as much as it should be.
Yeah. Well,
And that
that's the
can
thing.
have,
Let's stop there because that's I always try to bring that up when you bring up things like testosterone. Like, women need to pay attention to that also.
Mhm.
Some women are under the conception like, oh, testosterone's bad. No, testosterone's not bad. An excess for a woman, an excess of testosterone relative to estradiol is bad. For
Mhm.
men, testosterone, like just for men, estrogen and estradiol is not bad. It's bad if it's higher relative to your testosterone or too close in range. For a woman, they need testosterone too, but also besides that testosterone is that free testosterone. And the reason why, again, as soon as I get someone's blood work who's stuck, like I'm seeing where they're distributing body fat, no matter what macro changes I'm giving the cardio, it still feels like we're just going uphill. That's when it's like, hey, can we get some blood work done and stuff like that? And then, if they had already not told me about the birth control, right to SHBG, sex hormone binding globulin. The
Yep.
the pill-based birth control will send that into the stratosphere. And if that's high, okay, that is going to bind to the receptor site, and you're not going to get the use of the higher the SHBG goes, the lower the free testosterone goes. I don't
Yep.
care how high you can pump your total testosterone. Total testosterone for male and female is is it's not really, yes, you need that number higher, but that's not the number. You need to know what's free and readily available. If you have too much SHBG, everything gets bound up and your free T goes down. So
Yeah,
if your free T goes down, what's going to start to happen? What do we know with women and men with T levels that are too low?
you're going to have much more difficult time gaining muscle.
Yep.
Your threshold of failure is actually a lot lower as well. They
Mm-hmm.
found that women will just get tired quicker and they just won't be able to push their bodies to the same level. And it's interesting what you said. The pill actually downregulates production of testosterone by as much as 50% and alters the liver at the genetic
Yep.
level.
Uh-huh. Yep.
So, as you mentioned, then it expresses more of that SHBG. And it does all this so it can protect you. So the body senses there's too much estrogen here. And this isn't a good scenario. So your body's smart. It's trying to protect you, but ultimately in doing that, you have all these unwanted effects, especially as a female athlete as well.
Yeah. So that T goes down, okay, and you can have a harder time putting on muscle mass. You can have a harder time preserving muscle mass in the face of a caloric deficit, more cardio. You can have a harder time losing body fat.
Hmm.
Your mood is shit. Like, listen, if you don't have a good ratio of like T and E, estrogen, and a free testosterone and stuff like that. And that SHBG is that high, and you're gonna feel like shit. You're gonna feel like shit. Mood swings. Again, you talked about that threshold. It's like when you have adequate levels of T and free T, you have an edge to you, which is a
Yep.
good thing. You're able to get through high stress or environments, obstacles. You got that attitude. When that's low, it's like, I don't want to do this.
Absolutely.
I'm gonna snack, or I'm gonna do this. The
Yep.
motivation's low, so there's a lot of impacts from um, the SHBG going high, and the
It's
testosterone going lower.
Yeah, and it's interesting because they actually studied female professional athletes who went on the pill because they thought this is a brilliant idea. Now I won't have that week or so where I'm having my period, where I'll be essentially out of, contention of really like pushing my body. And in the long run, it will benefit me so much more. But however, it really backfired because of the things you mentioned. They lost their kick-ass edge. They
Hmm.
lost that motivation. They lost that desire to just go for it and became kind of like ho hum. And, also their threshold of failure went lower. And like you said, they're more tired. They're just like, I want a snack and I don't really feel like doing this. So it did not end up benefiting them how they thought it would initially.
Yeah, and it's like you're pumping that estrogen in there, and it's not even a bioidentical estrogen. It's ethanol, estradiol. It mimics it, but there's other side effects to it. And it's over time, you're looking at the probability of having increased body fat, or the hips, the thighs, because of what it's constantly telling you you are, and what it's constantly delivering to you. Um,
And fat cells love estrogen.
yeah.
So
So it's
that's
like, again, you're looking at lower sex drive, decreased muscle mass, increased body fat, harder to lose the body fat, harder to preserve muscle. You're losing any type of mental edge. You could be fooled into choosing a lifelong partner that you may not be compatible with. And again, no one talks about this, but again, look at patterns. So
mhm.
again, lowers your sex drive, right? So sex drive's lowered. Now you have your kid, whatever. Now you come off of it. Your partner is already in a relationship, and it's in a rhythm with you, with the old you. Okay. Now you
Yeah.
come off the pill. You may have an increase in sex drive. You have a change in your preference, and you're looking around like,
Yeah.
And
Your libido comes back because you had probably lost it on the pill.
yep. And
Hmm.
then, and then a lot of changes, a lot
Yep.
of changes. So again, so far right now, I don't really see a good case building here.
The other interesting thing too is that the pill can sabotage your thyroid, which
I
is
have
also
her,
good
have
at.
her, have her. Yep.
Yes,
Good. Okay,
it's
good.
going to make it really hard to lose body fat and get stage lean, and that's something that we're looking at with our competitors. But it also plagues our lifestyle clients, and all women. So first of all, the pill will deplete your body of vital nutrients that you need. And a lot of these are essential for an optimized thyroid function. So, like selenium, zinc,
Yep.
your B vitamins. And so, if you have a thyroid condition, first of all, and you take the pill, you're then going to make less thyroid hormone already, right?
Yep.
Now you're going to also convert less of it to its active form, and therefore there's less of it for you to use. Because just like you mentioned, the how the pill binds with the,
Yep.
increases the sex hormone binding globulin, the pill also increases the thyroid binding
Yep.
globulin as well. So then this elevated TBG causes free thyroid hormone to become bound. And so now any thyroid hormone that your body can manage to make is actually unavailable to your cells. So essentially rendering it useless.
Yes. And side note on that, again, I get tired of having to say the same thing to all my clients and new clients. Like, you do not know what's going on with your thyroid unless you know TSH, free T4, free T3, reverse T3. Okay, those are the bare minimums. If I see blood
Mhm.
work and it's TSH and free T4, I don't care because
Right.
free T3 is what's usable.
Yep.
Okay. And reverse T3 tells you if there's a bad conversion or not. You need to see the whole picture. And
Yeah.
also that's where that TBG comes in. Like if you have stuff binding to the thyroid hormones, it's not going to make its way to free T3, which is usable. And the free T3 is what you're looking for. That's
Yep.
metabolic effects. That's regulation of your mood. Yes, that's regulation of your body temperature. Like the feel good hormones all the time are going to be testosterone and thyroid. Like you take those, you feel good. If those numbers are higher and you're optimal in those two things, you will feel good. So
Yep.
if it's binding, so this thing is binding to sex hormone, it's increasing sex hormone binding globulin, it's increasing thyroid binding globulin. Uh, and they even say like if you have a history of thyroid issues, you need to have a specific conversation about going on the pill.
Yes, absolutely.
So think of the double, like again, from a not even just from a bodybuilding coach perspective, lifestyle. I want to lose 15 pounds for my wedding, blah. I want to look the best of my, nothing's happening. Why is nothing happening? It's like if you start to see certain things, okay, or someone just wants to drop 20 pounds and you start to see that, wow, you're on this pill, sex hormone binding globulins through the roof. Free T3 is down and minimal. It could have impacts on the thyroid anyway. You're going to be it's this is exponentially harder to make any type of useful and like noticeable changes. Is
Hmm.
everything doable? Yes, with hard work, but like, do we just want to like work hard all the time, like for the rest of our lives, when there's something major like staring us in the face? Like that's what I try to tell people. Like, okay, fine, you got in shape and you had to do 3 hours of cardio a day. Is that sustainable?
Yeah,
Why don't
right.
we get to the reason why this may be happening?
The other thing that's scary is that, you would think like, okay, well, if I just stop it, then I should be fine. But they found that the sex hormone binding globulin never returns back to the levels it was before you started taking the
Yeah,
pill.
it could stay
Never.
elevated. Yep, it could stay,
Yeah.
and it's a fight to like wait for it to come down. But yeah, like you said, it may never come down to
Yeah.
where it should have been. So this is a long term, a long term effect. And
Right.
and besides even thyroid, you got things that another thing it influences is, DHEA production and pregnenolone. Um, and, you know, uh, Another side note is for anyone out there who goes and, is maybe on like antidepressants or something like that, they feel off and, I don't feel right. I'm tired. I feel depressed. The first thing doctors, like bullshit doctors, will do is antidepressants. And some people may need that. I'm not saying never take this stuff. I'm just saying you should probably try to exhaust other things first. Um, if DHEA is low and pregnenolone is low, you can have real bad mood cycles. You can have bad short-term memory. But another thing, I just want to stick this in there, is test your zinc and your copper. Your zinc is supposed to be higher than your copper. And a lot of people, there's a high correlation between people who are depressed and go on antidepressants. They have an inverse relationship. Their copper is higher than the zinc, which makes them exponentially prone to depression. And then if you combine that with something like low pregnenolone and something like this pill, which is doing all this other stuff. You just took out thyroid, which makes you feel good. You took out testosterone, that makes me feel good. DHA and pregnenolone are low, which we'll go into now.
Hmm.
Recipe for disaster. Now we're on another drug that maybe you didn't need to be. Check your zinc
Right.
and your copper. It's a little extra to pay for, but it's worth it. But DHA and pregnenolone, again, these contraceptives with that mimicking estrogen, that non-bioidentical, it stresses the adrenals, and you're getting less DHEA. You're getting less pregnenolone. Um, in the natural federations, we can't take DHEA. Pregnenolone's allowed. DHEA is not allowed. But so, if that starts to come low, you can't like directly bring it back up.
Right. You
So
can't just
another
take it
sliding
and,
scale is
yep.
coming down. Lifestyle athletes can take it, but again, if you start to have lower DHEA, again, direct effect on libido, mood, energy levels, that DHA has an impact on that balance between testosterone and estrogen. And in the pregnenolone, again, that's in that steroidal chain. All right. After cholesterol, if that's lower, mood, memory, cognitive function, brain
Yep.
fog. Like, oh,
Yep.
my short-term memory is shot. I have brain fog. It's like that could be a low pregnenolone number on top of all this other stuff.
Yeah.
And again, I see it. I see the blood work, and I always run pregnenolone. And a lot, oh, what's preg? I'm running this, and all the time it's in the shitter, and it's just like, here we go, here we go.
Yeah.
So
People don't realize that a lot of women that now, as you mentioned, have anxiety and depression will go in to see their doctor, and now they're prescribed another prescription drug to slap a band-aid on this problem instead of looking at the root cause and going, wait, you're on the pill. That could be the cause because the pill works at the brain level. And so, therefore, you're going to have these side effects on your mood. And it's really scary to think about. We could just end up in the cycle of, okay, I'm going to take this pill and now it's going to cause this side effect. So now I have anxiety and depression. Well, now I need to take this prescription drug. And all of those come with a whole host of side effects as well. And they can overlap with that weight gain and, other things that could potentially be a hindrance if you are a competitive athlete as well. But the hormonal contraceptives affect the neurotransmitters and the hormone levels in the body. So that's going to contribute to changes in your mood and your emotional well-being. And they have studied these women that come off the pill and they say it's like the fog has been lifted and I can see clearly and I feel better because the other thing that it does is also it blunts that cortisol response. So you kind of feel like you just don't care about things. And that's a little bit scary as well.
yeah, yeah, it's I've seen so much. of this, and I'm sure you have too, and it's rough. But again, you know, what what are the other options? There are the IUDs, right? Low hormone emitting, then there's the copper. If someone has to be on it or wants to be on a birth control, I still would take that stuff over the pill any day. There's pros and cons to everything. With those things you're looking at, again, it requires a professional insertion, and there are risks associated with that. But the mechanism for which it prevents pregnancy, you have the low hormone emitting, which it's it stays more localized and it's not systemic, so it doesn't affect the SHBG as much. The copper doesn't emit hormones at all, so there's no effect on SHBG. I someone is In my experience, if someone is adamant that they have to be on birth control, I have, and they have had much better success with either low hormone or copper. Like, what do you feel about that? What do you see?
I have a lot to say on this topic because I have personal experience as well. But I think that, I think the first thing is to not make any women listening to this feel bad about their choice. Like,
Yeah,
there's no
yeah,
like
yeah, yeah,
shame
yeah,
and
yeah, yeah,
blame,
yeah.
like, you idiot, look what you did to yourself, right?
Well, no,
Because
no. Well,
the
that's the thing.
doctors really push
Yeah,
this on people and don't give them the whole range of possible implications. And it's just, as I mentioned earlier, it's really seen as like, this is the band-aid we're slapping on this, and there you go, and it's safe, and you'll be all good, and all your problems will be solved. But I personally also, this may sound silly, but didn't really think about the fact that you can actually only get pregnant 5 or 6 days out of the month. And, that's because our egg is only viable for 24 hours. Sperm can live in the uterus for up to 5 to 6 days. So if a woman has a regular period and they want to find something that actually is 99% effective when done perfectly, they could do the fertility awareness method, which is like get an app. There's a million of them out
yeah.
there. They can track their period. Again, it really only works best and is reliable when you have a regular period. But that is a very huge percentage compared to birth control, which is 91% effective with normal use. So you've got this method that doesn't involve putting anything foreign in your body and is pretty damn effective when done perfectly, and we all have that choice. As far as the copper IUD, the Paragard, I actually had the same perspective as you. I was like, I'm personally not going to put anything with these hormones in my body. I'm not interested in that. And I will share a story that I find very strange to happen because I had the copper IUD for about 5 or 6 years without a hitch. And I did,
Oh, yeah, that's right. You had an issue, right?
yeah.
Yeah,
So
that's
I
right. Okay.
competed. I came out of retirement. I competed in 2018. Went to Worlds, was in the best shape of my life at age 40. I thought everything was great. After that, I started experiencing bizarre things coming out of nowhere. I had random body pains. I like developed bicep tendonitis. I would go to the gym and work out. My recovery was tanked. I would feel worse after working out, and it would take me like 4 to 5 days just to feel normal. I started gaining weight that wasn't really relative to anything I was doing, eating or exercising. So I gained about 30 pounds in 2 months. And the scariest one was that my brain functioning was extremely affected to the point where I could not remember my password on my computer. which is something that I would never forget, which is
Yeah,
why I
yeah,
chose it as my password. And I remember just staring at the computer, being like, oh my gosh, nothing's coming to me. It was like I was dead. And I also remember just laying in my bed having zero energy. And one day I'm just researching what could this be? Because I went to the doctors and they took 11 vials of blood and they did every test known to man. And they said, on paper, you are perfectly fine. And I was like, I know I'm not, though.
yeah, yeah.
There's something very wrong with me. And, I had no energy to the point that I remember having to make the decision, do I brush my teeth today or do I give my children a bath? Like that is how dire the situation was. So, come to find out, I found a class action lawsuit of over 20,000 women who had very similar side effects that I was experiencing. And nobody was really paying attention to it. So I went to my OBGYN. I said, I think this is it. And she was really gaslighting me like, there's no possible way. That's not real. And I was like, okay, whatever you say, it's my body and I want it
You
out.
want
And
it out,
she
yeah.
she tried to convince me not to. And I was like, hey, you know what? If I find that this isn't the best thing for me, I can always get a new one. So took it out. The very next morning, I woke up not feeling like I was a 100-year-old woman. It was that quick of a change. And then from there, I had to go through pretty extensive protocol of like clearing out my body and detoxing and restoring the balance. So it took me quite some time to start to feel back to normal again. But that's something that I didn't expect to happen.
Yeah.
And so from there, I have now switched to the fertility awareness method. And like I'm all set with that foreign stuff in my
Yeah,
body.
because that's the mechanism. The mechanism with the hormone one, it's low emitting, right? And again, that hormone stays more local. The mechanism for the copper, it's technically creating a toxicity,
Yes.
okay, that kills sperm and egg. So it's
Yes.
like what happens if that toxicity goes somewhere else?
Yep.
That's
Right.
really the mechanism there.
And I
Um,
th- and I kind of think that the reason I got into trouble after competing was because my body fat was so low and your toxins are stored in your body fat. And so I think that through that process, it was like too much for my body to handle. And all of a sudden it was just like freaking out.
yeah,
And I think that's
same
why
thing
it
with
happened at that time.
same thing with supplements. It's like someone can take an X amount of supplements with higher body fat, and then it's like when they get leaner and food is more scarce, it's like they start to get oh, these vitamins, I'm throwing up, I'm nauseous. It's because you had a
Hmm.
lot more fluff going on last time. There's a lot more to absorb, and now there's all that food is not coming in. Okay. So
Yep.
that's not helping blunt everything. So food's low, body fat's low. I've had people even with thyroid. It's like they're on thyroid medication. It's just like they get so lean, and then all of a sudden it's like, wait, what's happening? Like the scale's moving too fast, the body temperature's erratic. It's like, oh, we actually have to lower the dose right now because of what's going on right now. So
Yep.
yeah, so that is interesting. Yeah, because the mechanism for that copper is basically toxicity. So yeah, that's
Yeah.
cool.
So I was like, I don't want the synthetic hormones in my body, but yeah, kind of forgot about
But
that part not
all
being
right, so
good.
in an ideal world, if someone's got a perfect period, yes, you know what's going on, which that method does work because that's how we got pregnant. We knew exactly what, Shauna was very good
Hmm.
with tracking that stuff, the LH strips, all that stuff. Sorry, the
Yep.
LH strips, all that stuff she knew. But what do we say to people who, again, they need an option and maybe they're not regular? It's like, is this something, they got to look into the pros and cons of really all these things kind of have pros and cons. I mean, the cons for the pill are very high. The pros of the pill are, I guess it's easy. It's a little pill that you take. there's nothing in your body. There's no surgical procedure. Like, there are pros and cons to all this. In an ideal world, you have a regular period and you can learn more and be more in tune with your body and not have to do this stuff. But, there are going to be people who are not regular and they need something to be a little more regular, and you have to do your own research and find out really what's best for you. The pill is just, I don't know. I know right away when someone's on the pill, like right away. So, and back to what you said about it's not about shaming, about like, oh, you're taking this. It started off as a joke, but in reality, a lot of people are not aware of a lot of the poisons in our environment. And I still have my own personal beliefs, about, is this an accident? Is this intended? Um,
Hmm.
you know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Because again, a docile sheep population is easier to control.
Well,
But you know, we weren't taught properly. Our parents weren't taught properly. A lot of this stuff is really just coming out. Like, when I was growing up, I didn't know that, the soap I'm putting in on my body, and the detergent I'm putting in the laundry, like, has all these chemicals, and those
yeah.
chemicals bind to receptor sites. And when it binds to the receptor site, then testosterone can't be used. And sunscreens are like, think about it. Like, that's the number one thing. It's like the sunscreens, all those endocrine disruptors, you put them on a developing child, put them in the sun to bake, and it bakes it into their skin.
Yes.
So a lot of
And
these things no one knew about.
right. And so you're bringing up a really interesting point because the pill doesn't just affect women. There's an effect on men in a really interesting way because women pee 10 to 20 times a day. They go to the bathroom. Upwards of 50% of the birth control pill makes it into the large intestine. So now it's excreted in the urine and the feces. Now it makes its way into the water supply.
Awesome.
So combine that with the fact that we have all these xenoestrogens and the endocrine disruptors, as you mentioned, and you're getting the increased estrogen from your water supply. Could that be the reason why we're seeing men's testosterone levels in this decline?
It's there, like, and even the numbers still don't correlate because of the endocrine disruptors. Like, a 500 testosterone score now is still much different than a 500 testosterone score 20, 30 years ago, because
Mhm.
now a 500, how much of it is free, how much of it is bound up by all this crap.
Right.
Back then, you know, the 500, it wasn't the top, but you could still be Hercules. And
Yep.
it really is everywhere. It's in all the products that people use. You have to be more aware. You're never going to win. You're never going to win totally unless you live in the woods in a log cabin on a wooden bed and be a strange weirdo and never talk to anyone. But it's everywhere.
Mhm.
Wi-Fi signal, your desk, the desk emits something. Like, everything, you just have to
Right.
do your best with your exposure and realize the importance of your skin. If you have products for your shower shampoo, and that stuff is loaded with parabens and endocrine disruptors, you're sitting in the shower, that's hot, you opened all your pores, your skin is the biggest organ, and you're just like, go on in.
Mhm.
And these are things that we were not taught, and no one taught us. And it kind of just happened. And corporations and government, they don't care. And you go to the doctor, as a young woman, as a young man, and you think that the medical field is supposed to lead you, and they're supposed to take care of you, and they're supposed to help you to better health. No, they want clients. They want kickbacks. They want to get money for this prescription. They want you in and out as fast as possible. They don't want to
Yep.
do the research. They don't want to stay up to date with everything because they're in the insurance rat race. It's a formula. It's like, I need X amount of people in the door today, and they got to be out the door at this time. Okay. It's an insurance rat race. They're Most doctors, unless you're dealing with a very specific hormonal based doctor who looks into this stuff, who knows about like all this stuff in the birth controls and the parabens and all the products you use, those people are cutting edge. And we
Yep.
both know some of them. Those people are cutting edge, but the general doctors that you see on the daily, they sometimes are 10, 15 years behind the curve because one, they've either decided to take the simple path of like, oh, well, this is what I was taught, this is what I'm going with. Hormones is not a big chapter in their book that they have to study.
Yep.
And on top of that, they're just so bound up with the insurance rat race. Like, got to get all this done, got to get all this done, got to get all this done, and that's it. So a lot of people have been steered, the wrong direction. You go in, it's like, oh, you're antidepressants, Ritalin, this, that, birth control, send it out. And that's
Mhm.
really what's happening. So I think a message to people who may feel like, oh, this one hits me in the stomach, hearing this stuff, you can still make some changes and try to turn the leaf over and start working in the right direction now that you have the information, or start your own quest in information. Um, you could do a lot of things to help turn it around. The
Yeah.
main thing is you have that information and now you can tell others. And for me, the biggest thing for me is learning all this stuff is, my son, like,
Yeah.
I'm not going to do, like, my mom didn't know some of the stupid shit she might have done.
Hmm.
No one knew. We know now,
Yeah.
especially with developing minds, developing bodies. We know these things, especially when you have a little girl, and it's like
Right.
that conversation comes up and it's just like, I don't think we're gonna fucking do this. Like,
Absolutely.
this is a long-term thing that can show its face way down the road into such deep things. Your body, your competitive drive, which can correlate to so many different things. Your success level at anything that you do, your drive, your ability to process information. When you talk about neurotransmitters, it's sometimes people get anxious and they get anxiety or depressed because they can't process so much coming in at the same time, and that's what leads to a meltdown. And that's that fog, and that's that gap in the neurotransmitters. When
Yep.
you're firing on all cylinders, you're not going to be as prone to that. You can process information faster. You can make decisions, informed decisions. The thing is indecisiveness. Like, that's the word. You can't make up your mind. Call the
Yep.
play, run the play. And when you
Hmm.
start to make these, as a young female, okay, and you're a mother and you're a father and you're dealing with a young female, this stuff can cascade into their success in school, their success in their career, what they want to dream for, what they want to strive for, who they bring through that door that's going to be with and then I got to fucking deal with this person for the rest of my life too. So it's like
Yeah.
you're affecting everybody. So you really got to know what's going on and really make the right decisions here. I mean, I don't have a girl. I mean, I want one, but like, what are you going to do?
Yeah. And, I think it's interesting too, is like if you look at the history of the birth control pill, it actually did a lot for women. So, I've seen different charts and graphs where you could see, for example, the percentage of women that were graduating from college or percentage of women like entering certain sectors of, of career. And they noticed that once the birth control pill started being used, which I do find it kind of funny that it ironically could only be used by women that were married at first, then later it became available to everyone. But they found that because of this, because, women don't get tied down from being pregnant, having that, time they have to step back and they're not able to pursue their career or, go through college or whatever. I think that it did a lot for women when you're looking at that perspective. But because of all these things that we didn't know at that time, we need to really look at it from a different perspective and consider that. And, there's 100 million women in the world on the birth control pill. 11 million of them are from the US. living in the US, and that's a very, very large number. And then, as you mentioned, with the male testosterone levels on the decline, should we look at like a bigger possibility? Like, is that a result of natural selection? Because we have these 100 million women all choosing mates that are more like themselves and more feminine. Now, this could be a really huge problem.
Yeah,
Like you
because those
said,
people, not that I don't want to seem too harsh, but if you're talking in that term, it's more of like you are taking maybe people who in the wild, in a lab, in the jungle, would have not passed on their lineage. And now they're being chosen because of the pill that is being taken. I think that I do think the plastics and all the bullshit and everything is a big cause for the decrease, but that too. If you're a because either way, testosterone, not exogenous, but higher T levels naturally, not with hormone supplementation, higher T levels usually will correlate to higher sperm counts. Just as we're seeing T go down, sperm counts are going down. So if someone is not duped, but if someone is incentivized by the pill to reproduce with someone with lower T levels, it's probably lower sperm count. Okay. And now they reproduce. And if they start that
mhm,
cycle, let's say they have a girl and it's like they're taught the same way they did. Get on the pill. It repeats the cycle. If they
yep,
have a boy, again, you may be in a situation where the boy may be more, not as masculine, and
mhm.
they will be picked up by someone.
And they're also looking at now, there's such a higher incidence of autoimmune disease.
Oh,
So
geez.
autoimmune disease has really been escalating, and the pill is uh, most definitely a cause of inflammation. So you now have the pill cause increased inflammation, which then is going to cause an increase in all these diseases that are coming from inflammation in the body. So that could be another thing. It's, the law of unintended consequences comes into play so much here because you think, oh, I'm just affecting this one part, but our hormones are through our whole body, and it's going to have so many implications in so many ways.
Yeah. Yeah. And I want to look up something real quick.
While you're
Yeah.
doing that, can I share a fun fact?
Yeah. Go ahead. I got something good here too. It just popped in my head. Go ahead.
I also, not to go on a tangent, but I also found it really interesting that the pill influenced the males from their perspective of who they were attracted to. So the more masculine males are attracted to women who are ovulating. Since women on the pill aren't ovulating, they found them less attractive. And they
Say that
actually
one
did
more time. Say that one more time. Men were
so.
attracted.
Yep. So men are more attracted to women when they're ovulating.
Okay.
So they did a study where they found that strippers on birth control actually got lower tips.
That is awesome.
Yes. And the women that were ovulating got tipped higher. So, the men, it all goes into like the men have the sense of like, well, who can I procreate with? So it's almost like, those masculine males want to come in and like,
Yeah. And
ravage
we
the
forget,
woman and
yeah, we forget as a society that there still is that biological signal. Like no matter what
Mhm.
we try to cover it with, there are still those biological signals and stuff like that sends a can send a missed signal both ways.
Right.
Yeah, that's interesting. What I wanted
Yeah.
to look up was the so we talked about estrogen, estradiol. Sometimes estrogen is demonized. Yes, you don't want imbalances of estrogen. Certain estrogens are bad, but estradiol, as long as it's in check and in range, is a very good thing. Even for men, it offers cardiac protection. Okay.
Hmm.
Estradiol offers good cardiac protection. That's why, again, their own decision. They want to live their life. But a lot of the heart attacks that you hear of with certain bodybuilders is why testosterone is taken not as TRT, it is taken through super physiological levels. It's thrown through the stratosphere. They're taking a lot of other drugs, but what do they like to also do? They like to suppress their estrogen. The
Hmm.
estrogen provides cardiac protection.
Yep.
Okay. So anyone who's doing TRT and hormone stuff, the leading people all agree that unless the range is like wild, don't test estradiol. Estradiol is good for cardiac protection. The synthetic estrogen, the ethanol estradiol that is in the birth control does not offer the same cardiac protection as natural estradiol. So that's a thing too. So you're not getting that benefit that estrogen does, the estradiol does provide with that mimicker.
Yeah.
So yeah, yeah.
Yeah. There's a lot of good that comes from estrogen for women
Oh,
too, because you're actually, they say you're prettier when you're ovulating, and that's the time when your estrogen is higher. So they say that your lips are fuller, your breasts are fuller, your fine lines go away. It gives you that like hourglass shape, your hips are fuller, so there's a lot of benefit to it. So we don't want to, demonize estrogen and say
no,
like it's
not
all
at all.
bad, because it
Nope.
certainly isn't.
No, it's not. You got to watch out for those synthetics and imbalances and stuff like
Hmm.
that. That's where things get, a little tricky, especially when you start to combine it with like look at the picture that we just painted of like this thing could lower this, do all this stuff, have all these effects on the brain, neurotransmitters, the thyroid, major sex hormones, and then on
Ooh,
top of
insulin resistance.
insulin, yes, insulin
We can
resistance.
talk about that. Yep.
Yeah, which if you want to go into, plus all the other stuff you're dealing with on a daily basis. This is not a confined lab where it's like what we
Hmm.
find is pro or negative. It's also in context of a society which is probably still on high edge for the past couple of years, not getting enough sleep. The food is shit. The water's shit. Okay. Parabens and stuff and all, unless you know what you're doing and what you're looking for, what you're trying to avoid, there's all those estrogens and parabens in all your household products.
Hmm.
Okay. And also to the food supply and stuff like that, like all the stuff that makes it into there. So in that context, you have a pretty dismal picture unless you really know what you're looking for.
Yeah. I think that it would be good also to kind of offer some advice and some steps. I will say, for any woman that is on the pill and now feels completely hopeless after this conversation, um, this is actually a really great book, Beyond the Pill by Dr. Jolene Brighton, that has a lot of great steps of like how to like reclaim your body, balance your hormones, and reverse the dangerous effects of the pill. And so she really goes into depth and has a really great perspective on that as well.
And I'll always plug and always talk about Dr. Anthony J's book. I don't have it down here. It's my the office upstairs, I believe. Yeah, the Estro Generation. Terrifying book, but it
Hmm.
prepares you. He lets you know like you'll never win totally, but the more you do, the better you're at. And he's got a good website, AJ Consulting. It's light, it's simple to go through, but you see some of the products that he uses, the soaps and stuff like that, which puts you in better fighting shape,
Right.
to supplement like things like what we're talking about today with the the pill-based birth control and some of the effects that it has. And then, real quick, again, because we are both competitive coaches, eh, again, it makes it much harder for that type of athlete to reach the pinnacle of what they want to, achieve in terms of their body. Is it doable? Yes, but again, reductions in free testosterone, protein muscle synthesis, changes in body fat distribution. It's like it gets rough, and we've seen those
Yep.
bodies where it's like, wow, they're lean up top, but where is it? And it's not budging.
And
So
you might agree with this, but I mean, the amount of my clients that are on the birth control pill is extremely high. So it definitely is achievable to still go and compete and reach that, desired low body fat and, that look that you need to be competitive. But like you said, it just makes it a lot harder. And where women also really get into trouble is when they get later in age and they're
Yes.
perimenopausal or menopausal. And now this, or if they're perimenopausal on the pill, they're kind of getting into more trouble because their testosterone is also declining because of that. And you've got all these other factors that are working against them. So at that time, or if they're not on the pill, then the other thing I've seen is that doctors will then put them on the pill. And
Yes.
then that certainly doesn't help either.
No, yeah, yeah. I've had a couple of those where it's like, oh, I just went to the doctor and they're saying I should do this. And I'm like, oh, okay. All right.
Yep. And like you said earlier, we can't just change one thing and think that everything else isn't going to be affected because the body works in intricate ways and everything's connected. So you can't just change one thing and think it's just going to be this one little localized change that doesn't affect everything else. When it's a hormone, it's going to
Yeah.
definitely cause other
Especially, yeah,
things.
plus it's impacting so many different hormones. So
Hmm.
there's a lot to take in here. So do you have anything else that you want to add?
I think that, as far as looking at what can a woman do that is on the pill and that is kind of like, okay, fuck, I need to do something here. I think that there are several things they can do. Number one, I definitely would look at depletion of nutrients because the pill definitely does cause a lot of nutrients to be depleted that are actually especially important when you're trying to be a competitive athlete.
Yeah.
And the other thing is to control stress because stress exacerbates all the side effects of the birth control. So of the birth control pill. So I think that, that's another important aspect. When we experience chronic stress, our body produces cortisol, which is the stress hormone, and then that disrupts hormonal balance and it amplifies the pill's effect on mood swings, libido, overall well-being, and all of that. So I think just like looking from that perspective, looking at stress factors in your life, better stress management, better self-care, those are really easy things to implement pretty quickly. And then also looking at the other side of it with the nutrient depletion and maybe just doing like a really good multivitamin or prenatal can usually help fill in those gaps if you don't want to go too specific.
Yeah. Um, I think I will close with the idea of learn as much as you can, assess pros and cons, and you need to look out for yourself. And what I mean by that is you need to think about your life and what makes sense to you and for your family and your children and whatever it is. Okay. Your dogs, your cats, your goldfish, whatever. You need to make that decision. And that applies to trying the natural method that you were talking about, not having pill-based birth control or any of the IUDs. That applies to, do I take the pill? Do I try an IUD? Do I do low hormone emitting? Do I do copper? You need to know what's going to work best for you. And then, as you said too, which is kind of off topic, but it's all related. Once you get to a certain age, you need to assess what the cost and benefit, the cost and risk reward to everything is. If you get to a point in your life where, you know, testosterone is low, male or female, testosterone is low, your quality of life is horrible, but you're just holding on to the idea of competing in a natural organization, you need to reassess what you're doing because
Mhm.
you get 10 minutes on stage, if that. Okay. Once it's done, it's done. Um, you probably already had a great career as it is. You need to assess what's better for your lifestyle. And if that means that you can't compete in a certain organization, because you're not eligible, there are still other organizations for you to compete in. You need to think about your lifestyle improvement, not
Yes.
always, oh, I can't take this because it's on the banned substance list. Oh my God. You need to assess and make decisions that's best for you, especially if you've already had a long career of competing. If you're seeing your quality of life is decreasing, you get one shot on this planet. That's it. I mean, for what we know. I mean, I may come back as something else. I don't know. But you get
That's another
really,
topic.
yeah, you get really one shot. You have your family and stuff like that. You want to be able to play with your kids and go places, do things, enjoy your life. You don't
Have
want to,
sex
yeah, you
and
don't want to
enjoy
have,
it.
yeah, you don't want to have things like, oh man, my life sucks, but I get to compete in this natural organization. Oh, I can't wait. I'm gonna go and I'm gonna kill it for 5 minutes. Like competing's fun. It's great. It's a great thing to get into and teach you about yourself, but you need to not base your whole life on that. And there are other avenues for you. Like I'm bringing this up because I'm seeing this more and more now, where I'm just like, hey,
Hmm.
I'm going to be honest. Your quality of life, does it suck? Oh, yes. So why are you doing this? Oh, but then I
Hmm.
can't compete in blah, 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 blah. Who cares? You can
Yep.
compete somewhere else. And, like, oh, I don't know if I'll be competitive. Well, are you competitive now with, like your energy is shit and, maybe you're not getting what you want to get? Like, it's the same thing. It's all just relative. You'll probably have more fun and, you know, everyone is going to get to that age. And if you want to keep that competitive stuff going, like, don't do it don't do it at the cost of sacrificing in your life and your quality of life. No, no fucking way.
Mm. I love that you just brought up that point. I couldn't agree more. And it's hard from the coach perspective seeing clients go through that, like you said, and having to make that decision. Do I want to continue on in this mediocre way of life, less vitality, feeling probably numb to everything, less energy, like so many factors that could present themselves and take away from the quality of life that unfortunately some women have to make that decision. Do I opt for this or do I continue to compete? And it's like you can change that and have this better quality of life than there are other options for competing, like you said, in other organizations. And I do find it sad that the women are making that decision for themselves. And I think it's a good point to really know, like, take a personal assessment, know what's important to you, because maybe you do have these goals and
Yeah.
you want to continue to compete. And maybe you're like, no, I want to feel good. I
Yeah.
want to enjoy my life.
Want to enjoy. And that's the thing. Enjoy your life. More energy, more drive in the gym. You could probably eat more. Like,
Hmm.
so it's like I wanted to leave really with that just because it's showing its face more and more. So I
Yeah. And I think another thing that goes hand in hand, like you mentioned, the empowerment, like you are the dictator of who you go to for a doctor. And people fall into, oh, who can I go to because they take my insurance? And you just kind of don't really think about it. But I personally see it as you should interview that person.
Yup.
How do you feel about this? What is your perspective? Like, what is it like when I have an appointment with you?
Just like you interview and press us all the time. Like it's the
Exactly.
same thing.
You're going to
Get
interview your coach that you're only working with a certain amount of time and just blindly go along with any doctor that's probably going to be with you through your whole life and
yeah.
through multiple courses and experiences through your life and all the changes that come with it as you age. And yeah, it's pretty wild. Or they go and interview their financial advisor, the person that's handling their money, more than the person that's going to handle the health and
Yep.
the vessel that they live in for the one and only life they have.
Yeah, and then that's a decision. You neglect that, and as you get older, you will regret it.
Yeah, and those were, I think that it was interesting when I found myself in those situations where, after having a baby and my OBGYN was like, "Okay, we're going to do your, 6-week appointment." They bring you in. "Okay, what birth control do you want to pick?" And I was like, "Actually,
All of them.
none." And she's like,
Yeah.
she literally almost fell over
Heresy.
in her chair.
Heresy. No way. You will take this.
Yeah, she thought I was nuts. And I was like, no, I'm not interested. And then I started asking questions because she's like, well, I think you should do this, take this course. Okay, tell me more information. Do you know what she said to me? No lie. That's what Google is for.
Awesome.
I was like, excuse me?
I can't wait till
I
we have
thought
AI robots as doctors.
you're literally telling me to put this pill in my body, but you are not either armed with the appropriate knowledge or care enough to tell me what the details are. Yeah.
That's what
And
they're
I was
armed
like,
with.
no thanks.
That's what they're armed with.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, you got to watch that. But yeah, I think that was good, right?
Yeah.
Not bad. We've,
Fun.
we've come a long way in a year and a half.
Yes,
Not bad.
totally.
All
What a
right.
great way to celebrate.
Yeah, that was good. Hopefully that was informative for everyone. Hopefully you learned some stuff. We'll put all the details really everywhere, wherever we put them. I'll work on that stuff. If you have any questions, or we'll set links up for the book, Anthony's book, Anthony's website, and then Cara, whatever you want to add, just message me and we'll get that taken care of. I hope everyone enjoyed. And Cara, thank you for coming on.
Thanks, Ryan. It's been great.